Jocelyn, welcome to Women Finding Clarity.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here today. I love your podcast.
I love and adore you already, and we haven't even had this conversation. Thank you for being here at such an early hour in the morning since you're 6 hours right now behind me?
Yes, but it's my pleasure. It's my honor to be here. And so I'm so grateful.
I appreciate you. So,
Thank
I want to jump right in and really make the most of our time here together. You do so many amazing and wonderful things. You've worked with clients from all over the world to help them step into their authentic truth. And with our monthly theme of awakening your inner power, I'd love to know, how do you define inner power? And what are some steps that women can take to awaken that power?
Thank you. Well, it's my absolute passion because I've been on a long journey and I started my journey without very much inner power. It was all very externally motivated. And so to me, inner power is really the power that comes from within, where we don't need the external validation, where we don't like external powers when everything in your life's going amazing, everybody is saying nice things about you. It's easy to feel powerful. But the minute that they take all of that away, what you're left with is that's your inner power. And when we're run by external power, we are very influenceable and we can't stay on our track. And we're always asking for permission. And am I doing it right? And am I on the right track? And all of these things, because I think we weren't taught that there's a transition period from childhood to adulthood where it's like as a child, yes, we do ask permission, we ask for validation, we're graded all the time, everything is based on results. But then when we become an adult, we get to it's our life now, right? And we were never really given that permission, and we were still asking permission from university, from our bosses, still from our parents. And so it's about claiming that power and saying, okay, now it's our life and our truth. And to me, the best that we could ever serve the world is from our truth. When we do what everybody else wants, we're not serving anybody because we're not on track. And then we're also not our most authentic self. So then we wonder why we don't have deep relationships. And it's because we haven't been able to speak our deep truth vulnerably because we're so afraid that we're going to get rejected or get abandoned. But for me, once I developed this inner power, I would rather get rejected and abandoned for both of us because I'm not being authentic and I'm not serving anybody to then both of us find our people than stay in this place where both of us are not happy and both of us are not fulfilled, right? So it's a journey.
It's a journey. And I love how you said it's for both of us, right? Because not only is life symbiotic, but who are we being fair to if we're not allowing both of us to live our inner truth? Maybe we're expecting to be able to live ours, but at the same time, the expectation is someone else is going to bend to us.
Yes, and that was the biggest piece in my life is before I always hoped that other people would change. And when I first started my energy work, my mom got sick and that's how I found out about this whole entire world. And I went on a journey to help her and I got her to a certain place and then she plateaued. And my teacher kept saying, you need to work on yourself. And I said, but if she gets better, everything's going to get better. And she said, no, there's a piece in this for you. And so finally, I listened to her because she plateaued and I couldn't help her past that. And I started working on myself. And the minute that I got neutral, the minute that I showed up different, the minute I started doing things differently, all of a sudden she started to get better. And then I realized that really my whole thing is we transform the world from the inside out. And so in anything in my life that I desire to see change, I get to figure out who am I being and how do I get to shift this to then have different results. And then the amazing thing is the people around me always change once I change. And so before, when I was waiting for other people to change and hoping and wishing that they would, I felt helpless and frustrated all the time. Now, I know if there's a relationship that I want or a situation in life, my business, anything that I want to change, I get to do the inner work that then shifts all of a sudden and my relationship changes, the situation changes. So now, I mean, we never have control, but we have control over what's going on in our head. And so now I get to kind of like paint the picture of what I desire my relationships to be. And unless you've like I know most people won't believe me, but from my experience, it's it's like night and day, and that's what I do with my clients. And then we're no longer helpless to the situation. We're no longer a victim to the circumstance. We get to shift and they get to respond because everything is a response to who we're being, right? Otherwise, we're just responding to each other and going round and around in a loop. Like you have perceptions of me, and then I, take that on, and then I act like that, and then I confirm your perceptions, and we keep going around and around and round. Or I can say, who am I being? And then show up different. And I can share an example of this. I used to always attract relationships, partnerships, where we'd start out the same, and then by the very end, I'd be doing all the work. In and it wasn't even just like business partnerships, it was also corporate companies that I ended up working with. I'd start out here and then all of a sudden things would change and then someone would get let go and they'd say, "Oh, Jocelyn can do it." I'm like, "Absolutely, I can." And then I'd end up doing their work, right? And I'm like, "What is going on? Why do I keep attracting these people?" Until I learned who was I being. And I realized that I didn't think I was worthy and deserving. So I would show up and I would say, "I'm here. Stay with me, work with me." And if they would say anything, I would never say no. I'd say, "Of course I could do it." And if they didn't do it, I'd say, "It's okay. I got this. You rest. You got a lot going on. I'll do it." Because I had to keep proving my worth. I had to keep proving that I was deserving. So it wasn't the people's fault. It was me bringing it out in them. Because if someone says, "Don't worry, I got it," it's okay, you go rest. What are you gonna do, you know? If you're in a storm and you got so much going on and someone says that, you're like, "Oh my gosh, thank you, you're amazing." You don't, most of the time, sometimes we will say no because, we have an inner compass and we're like, "No, I'm gonna do it." But most of the time when you're in your own storm, you're like, "Oh, you're an angel. Thank you for being in my life." And so I just kept doing that in every relationship. And the minute that I realized that, I shifted it, and now I have the most beautiful relationships and the most balanced relationships. And it's amazing. And it shifts overnight. Like I had gone to see someone that I had worked with in the past that we had this power balance with, and it was like this. And then before I went in, I had done so much inner work. I had pulled my inner power in, and I knew that I wasn't here to prove to anybody. I was just here to be. And I walked in, and all of a sudden the conversation changed, and that person started asking me all the questions and was asked like being like overcompensating for me. And I was like, how does this happen overnight? Like literally, I shifted and they shifted instantly. And that was the biggest breakthrough.
I love everything you just said. I
Yeah.
resonate so deeply with everything you just said. My listeners know, and I'll just share quickly again for anyone who's new and for you that, when we're talking about relationship, my husband and I went through a really hard time many years ago. And immediately it was a call to my life coach saying, like, SOS, we need help. Um, and one of the things that she said to me was, you need to figure out who you are and what you want if this doesn't work. And I didn't understand that really. It took me a long time to figure out what made me happy without him, what my life would look like without him. And I didn't know. And at that point, I was already an energy worker, right? So, really getting to know the self is on a completely different level than, and I'm going to say in air quotes, just being an energy worker, because it's not just, it's huge, but really getting to know your authentic self, your truth, really taking hold of your inner power is a different level.
That's so amazing and so powerful because you've been through it, so you felt it as well too.
Yeah.
And the
And I can absolutely attest to when you shift within yourself, everything else shifts. And, now we're getting ready to celebrate our 24th anniversary
Oh,
and, better than ever. And we both have had to do a lot of work on ourselves before we could come together. And once we worked on ourselves, the coming together to work on us felt easy because we'd already done the work on ourselves.
yeah, because it's never the other person.
Nope.
It's what the other person is mirroring to us. So, like there's a lot of relationships that we don't feel heard, right? But that's also like as women sometimes, or I know I've worked with my, like even with my husband and, all of this, but it's not my husband. It was my childhood stuff that I was then projecting into the relationship. And, if I, snap at my husband and then it triggers his parent stuff of the way that they and then so he would retract, right? And so it's like our stuff being like projected onto each other. And so we can't even see past that stuff. But once we shift that, we can see each other for who we really truly are. And we can see the love that's underneath all the stuff. Because underneath it, that's what's there. The other thing is like as energy workers, we were very focused outwardly because we are very empathic and we are very focused on the other person and we give and we give and we give. And that was the one piece for me as well too, is I had to then, turn it back onto myself as well too. And I realized I couldn't support my clients the way that I desire to or like to my highest potential unless I stopped the people pleasing. Because I used to just people please with my client, people please with everybody in the entire world, and say what they want me to say. Yeah, and do what they want me
Recovering
to
people
do.
pleaser right here.
Yes, but I think we were raised in a society that in an environment that nurtured the people pleasing in us, right? Because a lot of us didn't have nurturing relationships because a lot of the old parenting styles were a lot very, hard. And it was like, you do what I say, or I'll give you something to cry about, right? And so we were missing that piece. And so we showed up in that way. Not that there's anything wrong. We were just evolving. They were doing what their parents did, and each generation evolved the next. And so that's okay. But now it's like I teach my son that because I've been through it, and so I have the opportunity because now I'm lucky enough to live the life that I live. But like when I people please with my clients, I tell them what they want to hear. I'm not serving them.
That's
I'm
right.
telling them what they want to hear, but they're coming to me to hear the truth. They're here coming to me to hear the hard truth. And, the supportive hard truth. I'm not going to be, like hard. But once I shifted that, I was able to hold space for bigger breakthroughs for them than ever before. And I started attracting the most incredible clients and leaders because I wasn't attracting the leaders before because I was people pleasing and leaders need somebody that are going to meet them where they're at. And so once I did the reprogramming process to remove that, all of a sudden these leaders started to come into my life. And one of them even said, "The reason why I love working with you is because you tell me like it is." And I was like, "Thank you." Because before I didn't, I was too afraid to say something and I'd kind of tiptoe around the thing. Now it's like, "Can I be honest with you?" And I'll be able, and they'll say yes. And then I'll say, "Okay, this is what's coming up." And then we work through it. And then they have the biggest breakthroughs. So it doesn't, we think it serves us, but it actually holds everybody back. And so once we shift that, we set everybody free. It's so beautiful.
It's so beautiful. So you've lived in 12 different countries, and
Yeah.
that is astounding to me because I've only lived in 2 different states. So 12 different countries is amazing.
Thank
I'm
you.
wondering what life lessons, what universal truths have you discovered throughout 12 countries that help women connect to their inner power?
For me, living in 12 different countries, the biggest breakthrough that I had was being able to see that we're all exactly the same. Like we all still have the same, and it's not even the same. It's not even just 12 countries. Like before, I used to be so intimidated by CEOs and by, all these like these big luxury brands that I worked with. And then I realized we're all human. We all have our same stuff that we're working on. We all have the same voices in our head. We all have the same like worthiness, people pleasing, no matter what level we're at. We all have like our things that we desire to grow and work, or our insecurities. And so when I saw that, I was able to realize that we're all same power but different. If you talk about spirituality or anything, or even just the human, like for me, I recognize we're all same power but different. We just are experts in different fields, and we have different things that we're working on. And then that shifted everything, because then I could show up in a room and I could talk to them with my expertise, not thinking that I was an imposter being in this room with all these leaders. I was like, well, they're experts in their field. I'm an expert in my field. And so now I get to come into my power and deliver my expertise that's going to help shift their world, and they're going to shift my world. And so that's one of the things, if I could share with anybody, is like really owning that we're all same power but different. The title, the country, the culture, underneath it all, we're all the same. And when you can really own that, you're going to show up in this reality so much stronger, because you're going to be able to own that power. So that was the greatest gift that I've ever, because I used to be so intimidated even by different countries. And now I'm just like, to you, like, yes, you lived in two states. That's the same thing as living in a different country. I mean, like, you've stepped out of your comfort zone. Everything is relative. Before, I was on a tiny little island in the middle of nowhere, and even just to go to the mainland was a big deal for me. But then when you do it, everything just becomes your home, if that makes sense.
It it makes perfect sense, and we adapt and assimilate so quickly that, we live in so much fear of trying something new or being someplace else or meeting new people. And the reality is that we just adapt and assimilate so much faster than we give ourselves credit for. Which
Yes.
brings me to the fact that you teach several modalities, including neuro-linguistic programming and neurological repatterning. Sorry. So, my question is, can you talk a little bit about each of these and how these techniques help your clients have a mindset shift so they can create lasting change in their lives?
Thank you. Yes, it's my passion, like the reprogramming, as well with my energy work that I do. When I combine them together, it's like my secret sauce that helps us to transcend the limitations and the fears. Because really, to me, like, there's certain fears, obviously, like for our health, that are real. But everything else, all of the doubts and the worries and anxiety and all that stuff, to me, that's just an illusion. It's just the story. Because, yes, back in the day, if we did not fit into the tribe, and if we didn't play the part that they needed us to play, if we weren't what we should do and have to do, and if we weren't people pleasing and we didn't have a place, they'd kick us out of the tribe and then we would die. So, yes, back in the day, in tribal days, that fear to protect us to be what everybody wants us to be is real. But now, as we live in this day and age, there's so many tribes that we can join. Like, we could be self-sustainable in this, because we're so lucky to live where all the last generations created this world that we get to live in, right? Like, if you got kicked out of a tribe back then, there was nowhere to go because you were probably warring with the other tribe. So you couldn't even go to them, right? Now
Yeah.
we're so lucky. So that part of our fears, to me, are just an illusion. And that's the biggest thing that I support people to do, is to reprogram that, to remove it from the root, so that you don't have to keep reframing it all the time. Like, going back to find out where it came from, dig up the root, and then get rid of it so that you can move on. Otherwise, it's like cutting the lawn, and we just keep cutting the grass and cutting the grass and cutting the grass, and like transcending the fears, and um reframing it constantly, which is also very powerful. But like, if we can dig it up from the root and get rid of it, it's so much easier. We just have this like bag of rocks of all this baggage that we're carrying, and so I just go in and help you, to support you to remove them, so you're not carrying it. So you get lighter and lighter and lighter, and things get easier, and you respond in a different way. which then brings you different results in your reality. And so, without doing the reprogramming process, the biggest thing I can tell you is fear is an illusion. Like, I don't like just don't entertain those fears because you're going to be okay. When you can shift that anything that's like rejection or abandonment is actually a gift in this day and age versus death in the tribal age, that it's actually showing you what's in alignment for you and removing the things that are no longer in alignment so that you could, receive the things that are to take you to your visions and your goals. And when you can be strong in that unknown, into that void of like, okay, I'm going to release this because something bigger is coming, then your life shifts. And so I do the reprogramming process a lot of times for people for things like that, any fears, any doubts, any like when I used to before I did my first corporate workshop, I wanted to teach corporate workshops, but I didn't think they would take me seriously. I didn't think that was going to say was important to them, all these things. So I had to reprogram myself to remove it. And then the beauty is once you remove these things, they're all waiting for you there. So all of a sudden, out of the blue, my friend messaged and said, "Hey, this client wants to book you. Are you free?" And I was. She said it's last minute. I said I can make it work. I show up. I end up working with the CEO of the bank. And he says he has a team. And I said, I do corporate workshops. He said, send me a proposal. So I did. And I did my first corporate workshop. So that's what I talk about quantum leaps is like everything is waiting for us. It's just our beliefs that are getting in the way for it dropping in. So when you remove those beliefs, something gets to drop in and blow your mind. Because you've all had that experience where an opportunity drops in or an email drops in into your inbox and it changed your life, or that partner that you're waiting for that whole time all of a sudden drops into your life and now you're in a relationship and it changes your life just like that. And so my job is just to help you find those blocks so that we could remove them so that they could drop in. Like, even when I came back from my trip and I knew that I was like, before I went on my trip, I felt very relaxed. I went on my trip, I came back and I'm like, wow, I'm still in hustle mentality. So I'm going to reprogram this. I'm going to shift this out because when you're on vacation, it shows you how much you're actually like in it in your real
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
So I came back and I'm like, okay, I'm going to reprogram this. So I spent the week reprogramming it and shifting all these things out. And then at the end of the week, I got an email inviting me to speak at the World Trade Center for New York Climate Week for quantum leadership. And I had always thought the New York would be the last stage. I was going to build up to New York, and it was the first stage that I was on. And this stuff happens all the time because it's just our beliefs that are stopping it. It's like we are limitless. We are our infinite power. We are our infinite potentiality. But then we have these beliefs that we're not good enough. In the past, this happened. They're not going to take me seriously. And we have this hierarchy of people. But when you realize we're all the same and you have your expertise and the world's waiting for it, you show up in a different way. And then all of a sudden these things show up because you're ready to speak it in your truth. You're ready to speak it in your power and they're ready to receive it.
So powerful. So powerful.
It's so much fun.
So it's so much fun, right? Just watching the shifts take place with your clients, let alone yourself, it's just every day you're like, oh, my life is amazing, right? Because you get to witness these transformations and see people have these shifts, and it's just powerful.
Yes.
So, one of the things that, for women especially, I feel like we are, like we talked about, we are people pleasers as a whole. Not all of us, but as a whole, we're people pleasers, we're givers, we're doers, we're nurturers. And one of the things that you emphasize is that success without fulfillment leads to burnout. So, how can women ensure that they're building lives, building careers, even that align with their truest desires and their values?
That's where the inner work comes in, right? It's like really discovering. Sorry, I have to sneeze. Sorry about that.
No, bless you. Hey, this
Thank
is
you.
real life, isn't it?
So that's where knowing yourself comes in because I didn't realize that I was creating success for what success looked like. And then through this journey, like I had created this huge career beyond my wildest dreams, and then life happened. Like my grandma passed, my grandpa passed, and my mom had a stroke all in the same month, and my whole world got shooken up. I was living in Hong Kong at the time, so I was flying back and forth every 2 weeks from Hong Kong to Hawaii, and then it just wasn't sustainable, and so we just moved home. At the same time, Hong Kong went through crisis. They went through protests and COVID, and so I couldn't even fly back and forth for work. So it was literally like my whole life got flipped upside down. And then I really realized most of my life was external power because I went through it. I went through so much to really build. I went right back down into my childhood issues because I hadn't lived here for 20 years in Hawaii. I didn't even have credit in the States because I mostly lived in different countries. And so I had to get a Macy's credit card to build up credit just to get a regular credit card. Like it was like a whole new rebirth of a new person. And then it came from that inner power. That's when I realized that I was building success for everybody else. Because even when I was at the top of my last career, behind the scenes, I had anxiety, I had depression, I had all of these things, and I was just chasing that carrot because I felt I'm like, okay, I have this, but now what if I make this and this and this? Then I'll be happy. But otherwise, you're just chasing the carrot constantly because you're just doing it to get approval, to get validation, to say you're successful, so that what it looks like. But true fulfillment doesn't come from what it looks like, it comes from what it feels like inside. And so when I was lucky enough to have all that stuff happen to me, if I hadn't had all that stuff happen to me, I don't know if I would have the clarity that I have now because that chapter was all inner power. It's how I built my inner power. It's how I saw through all of those things. And then I discovered what success looks like to me. And that it doesn't matter what anybody thinks of whether I'm successful or not. It matters if I feel successful on the inside. If I wake up every single day and I feel fulfilled and I feel like this life is what I feel, not what they want. And so I did a lot of rearranging in my life. And now it's like this is my life. I get to live this life and I get to bring my gift to the world versus can I fit into your box? Can I do something that's going to make you happy? Can I do something that's going to make you proud? Can I tell you that I did all these things so you could be like, "Oh my gosh, you're amazing." Now all of that's just icing on the cake. But when you know your truth and you know what success looks like to you, it's like you're on this train and you can keep going. And the train's not going to stop for anybody. People can hop on and they can hop off at any time. But I know where my train is going because I know what I'm creating here in this world for me, for my family, for my friends, for my clients, and the world. And so you cannot like it along the way. But when I do get there and you want to hop on, that's fine. You know what I mean? Because along the way, people are upset with you. They don't think they're like, "What are you doing? Just get a real job. Just give up on that, like you're never gonna make it." And not because they don't love you, but because their fears are so big that they're afraid for you. Like they're really afraid that you're, gonna fail or you're not gonna make it
Because they love you, right?
because they love you. Yes.
Yes.
And so that's where you get to recognize that, okay, like I'm gonna hold this for all of us. Like I know the house that I'm building, and right now it looks like a skeleton. All the walls are up and there's no windows in and everything, but I know what I'm building. You don't need to know what I'm building. And I'm gonna keep building it. And then when I do build it, you can come inside, right? But like I'm not
Beautiful.
gonna stop because of you, because I love you. Because if I do stop, we're all gonna be stuck here. Like once we have that inner power, we get to be the ones that break the 4-minute mile for everyone around us. We get to be the ones that go and do the hard stuff and then show them that it's possible. And then because we did it, they know they can do it as well too. It's not always easy. That's why you need that inner power because a lot of times there people are going to be afraid for you. They're going to judge you. They're going to say things. But if you know deep down inside what you're creating and you know it's inevitable as long as you never give up, then you can hold that for everybody. And then when you get there, they get to celebrate with you, and that's awesome. And it doesn't matter what they did along the way, you just get to hold that. And then you
Yeah.
have this deep fulfillment because you didn't compromise for anyone anymore. And for women, the one thing that I want to share with you is like when we compromise, we enable the behavior and we keep it here. So let's say, for example, like I used to always help people, especially this one couple, like friends or family or whatever it might be, and they just, would have like situations, right? And then I would come in and fix it and make it better, just so that that situation could keep going on because I would just keep fixing it so that they could get through another week or another month or whatever it might be. And I wasn't helping anybody, right? And I would compromise myself and then they would compromise and we'd be stuck here. But when I said enough, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to prolong this. Like, you guys get to figure this out. Then they got to shift. And then they don't have as many problems because we're not keeping each other in the cycle. Every time we compromise ourselves, we allow them to run a pattern as well too. And so, like, even for example, like someone asks you, "Oh, can you give me a discount?" Right? And if we compromise and we say yes, they'll never shift. But if we say, these are my prices, I honor my price and I honor you, and I know that you'll be able to find a way when the time is right, then they're going to make changes that they never would have made to then step into their power to then come in and meet you where you're at. And then that's such a way healthier relationship for everybody. Like when I think about this, I think about win-win for everyone. And I think about how many times I kept people stuck in patterns because I was too afraid, because I constantly compromised for them. And now I realize I didn't serve anybody. And it's a hard one as a woman because we're such nurturers. But then I know now if I don't take a stand, I'm keeping all of us stuck in these patterns. Like when I was working on all my codependent issues, a lot of people got mad at me when I started to have boundaries. But every time I had that boundary, I'm like, I'm doing this for us so that we don't keep this pattern going. And I know it's like, I can handle it. Like, throw it at me. I can handle it because I got the tools, but I stand for us. I'm not going back. And so then you have that nurturing, but in a different way. Like you're still here for your family and your friends and for everybody, but in a powerful way where then we all become leaders and then they don't rely on you because one of the shadow parts about caregiving or being the one that's always overgiving is that we take their power and then they constantly just give our power and then we thrive on that power subconsciously because we feel we're needed and loved and all of these things, and then we keep that pattern stuck. But the minute that we give them their power back, no matter how hard it is, the minute that they get to grow and the minute that we get to grow. And the one thing that stuck with me forever is when I was in the rehab with my mom, and they used to have people that they call them stroke recoveries. I can't remember what they call it. They come back and they share their story of their recovery from strokes, right? And so I was sitting there one time with my mom because I was staying in the rehab with her. They allowed me to stay with her. And I was listening to him and he said, the best thing my family ever did for me was stop helping me. And he said, I would not be walking right now if they did. He said, I pissed them off so much that they stopped helping me because, like he was frustrated and he's like, get me this, get me that. And, when you're in your pain, you project your pain out. And that's just the way that it works. There's nothing wrong. That's just what we do. And so they got so mad, they stopped helping him. And now he said, that's why I'm walking and that's why I'm driving. And that stuck with me because I was like, that is so true. If we keep doing these things, if we keep tying our kids' shoes for them, they're never going to learn how to tie their shoes. And so we just get to do that as adults and realize if we want to be the change, we have to be the change. And it's not always the easiest to be that person. That's why you have mentors, you have coaches, you have healers, you have all these people to help support you. But you get to claim that change for you and your family and your friends and your life and for the world. Because if we all show up this way, the world will be a completely different place.
Mm. I just feel like all your words are just such an enlightening, warm hug
Oh,
because it's all so true. It's so very true. And, I'm going through it right now with someone where I have had to set a firm boundary, and that boundary was not appreciated. Right. And so, right now, we're on very different energetic levels. And I loved how you said, you're on the train and people are going to hop on and people are going to hop off. And it is our responsibility to keep our own train going. I welcome all the people to hop on. And I was going to say, but no buts. And my train has its own set of rules and boundaries, right? and you're welcome to hop on as long as we're all in agreement that these are the boundaries. Um, I just want to make sure that I'm saying everything that I don't want to give away any identities or anything like that. You know what I mean? But that has been one of the things is that the relationship had to change because it was no longer, it was repeating the same old pattern, right?
Yes.
And I don't live in that pattern anymore. For anyone else, why am I compromising and allowing myself to live in that pattern for one person?
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
And so for me, it is, you know what? I'm going to grab that power. I'm going to take it back. I'm going to set a firm boundary. And, we started the conversation with a dialogue about um, when you change yourself, the other person will change. And I want to be clear to say that we're not changing ourselves so other people will like us.
Mhm.
We're changing ourselves so we like ourselves and love ourselves, so we can continue to grow and evolve, so our train keeps moving forward. And at the same time, the other people do change because they witness your change. They find value in your change and they want to step up to the task as well. They want to
Yes.
grow, they want to evolve.
Yeah, and that is so beautiful. And it is hard in the beginning. Like, here's one thing that's going to help you through it that helped me through it. The only people that are going to be upset by your boundaries, your healthy boundaries, are the people that were benefiting from your unhealthy boundaries. And the people that
Amen.
aren't, they're going to be happy for you. They're going to say good for you, right? Now, those people that are benefiting from your unhealthy boundaries are not bad. That's just the relationship that you guys built together. Just like I said, I brought that out in the people, right? Once
That's
I
right.
shifted, that shifted in my relationships with them. They got to show up in a different way for me because they're responding off of my energy. And the other thing that I discovered from this is that those people that I held boundaries with that they were the most upset, if they're meant to be in your life, once you transition through it and you get through that piece, my relationships with them now are so much deeper and so much more fulfilling than they were before. And now there's no resentment, there's no anger or frustration. I mean, obviously it pops up here and there, right? But resentment only comes from when we overcompromise and we do something we don't want to do, and we do it out of obligations or shoulds or have to. So if you're not doing it out of that anymore, you can actually truly appreciate that person and be with that person. And then that's a real relationship. And then the ones that aren't meant to be in your life, they find someone else, and then someone else comes into your life who's an energetic, who's a match for you. And the other thing is, like, boundaries is like the lowest point that we would ever go. We're like, this is, if you don't honor and respect me, we don't have a place. I honor and respect you, you honor and respect me. But standards is like how high we can go. So if we hold high standards for ourselves and for people in our life, like if we're like, okay, like my standards are, love, pure love, communication, all these things, and I show up in that way in my truth, then I have these standards. Most of the times you won't have to enforce a boundary.
That's
You
right.
only have to enforce a boundary if we keep compromising and everything, right? And so that's one thing that I like to focus on is like, okay, how do I hold my standards then? How do I show up in this way? And how do I show up the way I want them to show up within me? And who am I being to then want these relationships so that I don't have to enforce the boundaries, right? So then it comes this different, it won't be so difficult. And I'm not saying that now my life is like so easy and perfect. Like there are days where the fears just like want to pop up and I'm like, like I'll reprogram them and I'm just like, I have no time for you. Like, I appreciate that you were there in the past, but now the only thing you're doing is slowing me down. And then there's amazing days, and then there's days where I'm growing through. I call it growing through it. Like stuff happens because when all that stuff happens, there's a quantum leap available for you. There's something that's about to shift. You're about to break patterns. You're about to shift. You're about to go into this next thing. but really that fulfillment comes from your truth, from like really, like I call them like sacred yeses and sacred nos, like listening to your truth. If it's a yes, it gets to be a yes. If it's a no, it gets to be a no. And I don't need to explain that. Like there's just a feeling inside of me, and my relationships know, people in my life now know that. Like we had these conversations that if it's a no, like it's a no. And like I can't, like, I'm just listening to my truth and they're listening to their truth. And I have these most incredible friendships where we just get to say that to each other. And we don't have to like give all these reasons because we spend all this time just writing a reason why we're not going to do it.
Right?
You
It's
know what
all a
I mean?
story. It's all a
Exactly.
story. I love you for calling that out.
Yes.
No is a complete sentence is so
Yes.
cliche, but it's cliche for a reason. Why
Yes.
are we spending our energy writing a story that
Justifying.
is fiction
Yes,
for the
exactly.
most part?
Yes, because a lot of times it's a no, but we don't even know why. So then we have to justify why it's a no. We have to think of a reason why it's a no.
Yeah.
Other than it just being like, it just doesn't feel right. Like, I just want to rest today, like, or whatever it might be. And it, like, not today, maybe in a month from now. It just because today is a no doesn't mean it's not going to be a no in the future, right? And so if you just let your gut, your intuition, your soul, whatever word you want to call it, it's all the same thing. If you let that knowing guide you, it's going to be the roadmap to your visions and your goals. It's going to be the roadmap that keeps the train on the tracks. Because as soon as you start listening to external opinions, that train's going to go on their track and then you're going to have to pull it back over here. When you're on your own track, things are not as crunchy. Like things just get to flow easier. You're still going to have stuff because it's evolution, evolution over your entire lifetime, right? It's not just this, like people think like I'm going to climb to the top of the mountain and I'm going to be happy there. But like we climb the mountain to feel what it feels like to climb the mountain, and then we want to climb another mountain. So that's how I said in my last career I was never fulfilled because I was just like chasing that carrot,
Yeah.
thinking if I get to the top of the mountain, but then there was another mountain and another mountain because I was still doing it for everybody else instead of for my truth. And so once you realize that if everything was perfect, you'd be bored out of your mind because they made a movie about it and it's called Groundhog Day. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like we're here to play, to evolve, to grow, to innovate, to transcend because it feels so good to accomplish something. It feels so good to like be in the shadow and do like go through these hard times to then come out and be like the hero's journey, And we signed up for this. We just forget that we signed up
That's
for it.
right.
So the minute
Well,
we accept that, it just gets easier.
yes. Yes. So one of my mentors says, pain pushes until vision pulls. And
Mm,
that's so powerful. That is everything you were just talking about. And that's what made me think of it. And going into your train track metaphor, our the track is our vision, right? And we're on the track of our vision and our track runs smoothly. It's when our train jumps the track and we derail that there's carnage, right? And so the the goal is to how can I always stay on my track? How can I always stay on my vision so I don't derail and there's carnage?
yes. And then you have to clean up the fallout, right? Like you'll always
Exactly.
get there. No matter what, if you never give up, you'll get there. I
Yeah.
just like to help my clients not have to go through unnecessary stuff, right?
The
And so,
passive least resistance goes
yes, like
right
get
through
on
your
the
center.
freeway, get on the expressway instead of like, all of these things. And that's the other thing. This path is not conventional. Right? And so people are going to think you're crazy for getting on the expressway when everybody else is going this way. But can you hold it? Can you? So to stay on your track, really, the main thing that I say is just the inner power, the vision that you know is inevitable. If you know that that vision is inevitable, if you know that in quantum physics, past, present, future is in the now, so it's a future echo from a future memory showing you what's coming. If you take aligned action every single day and never give up, then you'll get there. Think about anything in your life that you've already created or manifested that seemed impossible, and then you did it, and it's just your new normal now. If you have that knowing that's so strong, 90% of the wobble is going to be gone. And the wobble is what takes you off the track when you doubt it, when you worry about it, whether it's good enough, whether someone makes a comment and makes you doubt it, or, all of these things. As long as you don't wobble, if you can just strengthen that inner power and that knowing every single day, like I did a post yesterday, it is what it is till it isn't. Um, it is like it just you wish and you want, and all of a sudden, boom, just like that, it drops in, and that's your new normal. And in any moment, that can drop in. If you remember and you know that your vision is coming, if you never give up and you take aligned action, not just busy work, aligned action, the thing that's going to bring the biggest value to your vision, which is normally the most uncomfortable. You know what I mean? But if you're committed to doing that, which is what I help my clients to do through the reprogramming process, is to make it easy, and you stay in that knowing, there's less wobble, there's less jump. Again, it gets easier, and then of course it becomes faster because you're not jumping as much. So then you're like, you get to pick up speed, you get to pick up momentum. And like if we can just pull, like for me, it's just like pull all your energy in. Everything that you were externally looking for before, pull it all in. Nurture that truth within you. Nurture what success looks like to you. Nurture like your vision, your knowing, your inner power. Let everything else be icing on the cake. And if you could just do that this year, because this year is the year of the snake, it's like shedding all the old, all of the, like a lot of times when I work on clients, we have this fractal called take off your mask. It's like we've been wearing this mask our whole life because as children, we were taught to fit into the box. And if you don't fit into the box, there's something wrong with you. So most of us are living these masks, and even me, I'm still uncovering masks. And I'm like, I thought I cleared that. And then I'm like, what? And we just keep clearing and deeper and deepening and deepening and deepening, right? Because we get to, and because it's fun, because we get to. And so if we just spend that year shedding all of this, the fulfillment comes easy because now we're living our truth. We're not living anybody else's truth, but our truth. And then you don't have to try to find the fulfillment because it's in your heart. It's in your everyday. You're just like, I wake up and I get to. If it's a should, don't do it. But if it's I get to, and you can shift a lot of things to I get to. Like when I was building my business, I still was doing freelance work to bring in predictable money so that I could, not have to put pressure on my business and like compromise my business or my prices to make money. Like I wanted to be there for my clients because I desired to. So I did freelance work. And in the beginning, I was so frustrated with it because I was like, it's taking away. I could be working on my business right now. And so, of course, the job was full of drama and all this stuff until I realized, oh my gosh, like I get to do this freelance work. It's paying my bills so that I can build a business out of pure passion and desire and truth. And so when I showed up that way and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to show up and I'm going to honor these people and I'm going to do the best job I can because they're giving me this money to be able to do this. So I get to, all of a sudden the job started to get easy. And I would show up to my shift and everything would just work. I'd show up and they'd be like, oh my God, this happened, this happened, this happened. And I'm like, okay, awesome. So I'm gonna show up and I'm like, in gratitude. And then all of a sudden things were easy. We'd finish early most of the time, or it'd be so easy that like we would just, chill and stuff like that. And things just worked. And then some of the other people would say, oh, I just want to be on Jocelyn's shift because things just work and the client's happy, everybody's happy, right? But it was my energy that shifted it because I was grateful that I get to do this and I'm going to show up and I'm going to honor them so that I can bring that to my clients as well too. Like our energy shifts everything. And once you realize that, you get so excited to be like, okay, well, I'm not saying like we create everything. Like I don't want to say like like there's things that we get to go through that we're going to grow through no matter what. But we get to shift 90% of them with this mindset and just make it that much easier and cultivate the reality, like I teach my son, of magic miracles every single day. And if we just look for the magic and miracles every single day instead of all the things that are wrong and all the things that aren't good enough, we completely shift our life.
100%. Magic miracles, not only look for them, expect them.
Yeah.
Expect that they're going to show up
Yeah.
every single day.
Yeah.
So, my really last question for you is going to be, although last month's podcast theme was love yourself first, I was going to ask you, what are some practical steps that women can take to deepen their self love, to deepen their confidence? And everything that you just said about pulling your energy in and really, how can I identify and get in alignment with my values, with my higher self, with what I want to create in this world? That is really one practical step. Do you have anything else you'd like to add before we close out?
Well, I do have something that I call the soul evolution process that anybody can have if you DM me. Basically, I take you through a heart space meditation, and then in it, you just tune in and ask, like, what's your next step of evolution, your truth. Like, it's a place where you can come in and discover your truth. And in the beginning, you would follow along with the audio until you get it, and then you can just drop down and know. Like eventually it just becomes your new truth because otherwise, like I said, we're so like I was always like, I came up with this idea. What do you think? I was always asking everybody instead of knowing my truth. And so now, like, that's been my compass. That's been me where it's like, I'm going to ask me. And then I'm going to also give to the world, but I'm going to do me first. I'm going to fill my battery up first because I can't fill anybody's battery up unless I fill my battery up first. And then I get to be the ripple. And the first time that I tried this, I played around with it at this grocery store. And the person at the counter, the fish counter, was very, very grumpy. But because I had spent the whole week building my inner power up, and now like I'm like, feel, what do I get to do to fill my battery up? So I felt like so full and so vibrant that I was like, let's play. So I went to talk to him and I sent him love and we were talking. And at first he was very upset, grumpy. But by the end of it, he was joking around. And then he ended up giving me a little bit of extra free fish. And I'm like, wow, that was nice. I didn't expect that. Right. And then I wanted to see if my ripple lasted. So I stood off to the side to see how he would react with the customers after me. And he was still that joyful person. And then I realized, wow, I have this power to change the world if I fill my battery up first. And I don't sacrifice it just for one person because that person really wants me to go do what they want me to do. Like I get to pull it in and I get to have impact on the entire planet. My ripple is huge. And so that's when I always say for me and for the world, but for me first. And I teach my son that because before I was taught give to everybody first. If there's any food left, then you eat. And
Right.
it's the complete opposite, right? So just pull it in and know that the more that you bring, like if Anthony Robbins and all these people didn't stand for their truth first, we wouldn't have them as inspirations. We can be the martyr and we can sacrifice for everybody, but we're not going to be able to transform the world that way because it's just kind of like we help, but we it does help, but not to the impact that if we become the inspiration, which is a self-charging battery. If we become the inspiration, if we live our truth and we break the 4 minute mile every single day and we stand in that truth and we scream it on the top of the rooftops, get on stages around the world, show people what's possible, then they see it. They do the same thing for their people, their people, their people. And then all of a sudden we have a different reality. But the only way we can do that without burning out is doing it through inspiration, not as the martyr, not as overgiving anymore. Because I was a burnt out generator. I don't know if you know human design, but like I was burnt out, and you're not supposed to have a burnt out generator. And it was because I was constantly overgiving and compromising and raising people up that way. And then I couldn't help that many people. But if I want to transform the world, I get to do it from myself. I get to make sure my battery's charged and I get to be that inspiration for everybody. So when you're doing it, just remember you're standing for the world. You're not just standing for that one person that, you're compromising for. Like you're standing for the world. And when I stood for the world, it was so much easier for me to make the changes because it was bigger. It's like, what do I desire to see for my son, for my family, for the world?
Mm, such a beautiful way to end the show. You are such a light in this world. You are changing the world. So
You too.
thank you for the work that you're doing. I have your contact information in show notes already because I know that everyone's going to want more of Jocelyn.
Thank you so much. And I'm so grateful for you and all that you do and your powerful podcast that's changing so many lives and the ripple that's so big as well too. So thank you so much for all of that and for your beautiful energy.